All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to your own book show on this Friday evening, as the world. Oops, there we go again. As the world seems to be going crazy, but thanks for joining me. I know your time is precious. I am, for one, greatly looking forward to getting out of here, getting back to Puerto Rico, getting back home. Just the technical side of putting on these shows in my hotel room with this equipment, there's always something. It's somewhere there's always a bug, somewhere something is going on that just disrupts my ability to get it done right. But everything's last minute. Anyway, it's working. We're on. We don't have that great intro music. We don't have the great intro slide. But you are here with your own book show, and we are going to be talking politics again today, at least for part of it. And we're going to do an exercise in statistics. So if you're interested in statistics at all, stick around because we will do a quick, discussion of what it means to say that the COVID test has a false positive rate of X, and we'll do some numbers, and I'll show you when it's important and when it's not that important, and how it all works, because people throw these numbers around. I've talked about this before, that very few people out there actually understand statistics and know how they work, including doctors and scientists and epidemiologists and people who should know better, or people who have other scientific degrees. Statistics, it doesn't necessitate that they know how to do or how to interpret statistics, it turns out. I would have thought better of them, but it turns out that that is the reality. So we'll talk about that. That'll be in the second part of the show. The first part of the show, we're going to be talking about, well, what everybody's talking about, what the news is talking about, what's out there, and that is, well, what happens now? I think the breaking news that I just read, and I guess is being discussed on the chat, is that Trump is being banned from Twitter. Now, I don't know what you think about Twitter banning Trump and not banning other people and the inconsistency and all that, but I have to say this, and I think this is a really, really important point. I think it's great that we live in a country where the president can be banned from a social media platform. I think it's great that we still have enough freedom and that the executive, the president, does not have enough power to stop a private company from banning him. So I think the fact that Facebook and Twitter banned President Trump, I don't know if it's the right business decision. I don't know if it makes sense given who else they let tweet and be on their platform. But just in terms of a reflection of what it is that we're living at, the world we're living in, I think it's two thumbs up. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a great indication of the fact that we still have some freedom in this country. And I'm not sure how long this freedom will last. I'm not sure how long politicians will let us get away with banning the president from a major social media platform. That's the kind of freedom that might be going away, but we still have it. Even Donald Trump, with all of his, authoritarian, if you will, instincts or preferences, can't stop this. He can't actually do anything to prevent Twitter from banning him. And again, I think that's a great sign for us. Now, it would be nice, it would be good, it would be reassuring about these platforms if they showed any kind of consistency, if they banned authoritarians across the board, if they, banned specific language across the board, if we knew what was allowed and was what not allowed, if they banned, let's say, terrorists from posting, if they banned dictators, real, authoritarians that have actually become authoritarian, and are posting there, inflaming violence in their own countries or inflaming violence abroad. Would Twitter ban the Ayatollah from making a fatwa on Twitter? I think they would, actually, if it was an explicit fatwa. I think they would. But it would be nice to know what the criteria are objectively. And that's my biggest complaint about all the social media platforms, is that they don't publish an objective set of criteria that we can then follow or not, but that we can know what is allowed, what is not allowed, what is bannable, what is not bannable. Of course, they have every right to make it ambiguous and to leave all the authority in their own hands. But I think long-term, that business model is not going to be a productive business model. This is not the end. Donald Trump is not the last president or senior politician that is going to approach this kind of ban. All right. So as we all know, Trump supporters on what was it, Wednesday, stormed the Capitol, stormed into the Senate and into the House, all with an attempt to disrupt the proceedings there, which was certifying or counting the certificate, putting the final touches on Joe Biden becoming president on January 20th. And it was explicit in order to disrupt those proceedings. It was explicitly in the name of keeping Donald Trump as president. It was all explicitly in the name of Trump, in the name of this idea that this election was stolen. Force had been used to take away this election from its legitimate winner, Trump, to an illegitimate winner, Biden. And therefore, it seemed reasonable, if force was used, to use force in order to get the proper result. I think Trump and everybody else who'd been using the language of this is a stolen election, this is systemic fraud, all of that, and then encourage them to go and to take it back and to win it back, and to that's what you should expect. These are the consequences of what you should expect. So we got what we expected, and we got violence. And now it turns out that one of the cops trying to slow down the mob, taking over the Capitol building, has now died. So blood is on the hands of those who went in to the Capitol, and blood is now on the hands of those who incited the violence. And of course, we can see the Democrats are going to take full advantage of this. This is politics. And, this is an opportunity for the Democrats to splinter the Republican Party. This is an opportunity for the Democrats to call out Republican senators and House members and make them take a stand. Are they with the president? Are they with those who stormed the Capitol? Are they with those who claim that this election is illegitimate? Or are they with the rule of law? And at this point, the law is that Joe Biden becomes president January 20th. But this is like they handed the Democrats this unbelievable gift. What Trump and the mob have done. They've just handed them this amazing gift. And the gift is that now Democrats get to have the moral high ground. They are the party of law and order. They are the party, supposedly, right? They're the party of following the Constitution. And hey, Republicans, where do you stand on this? And if the president really did incite this, as many Republicans are claiming, and I think is true, then are you going to support him with this inciting? Or are you going to stand up and be counted, either by demanding you resign, as the senator from Republican senator, or at least Republican for now, Republican senator from Alaska has just suggested that the president should resign, or are you going to vote for impeachment? So, to expect the Democrats not to try to impeach Trump and not to force Republicans to vote on this, I mean, I don't know who you think the Democrats are, but that's not what's going to happen. They're going to milk this for everything that they can. And they're going to succeed in splintering the Republican Party, in causing the Republican Party's different factions to be fighting all-out war between them. Right? And now, Frank says an outgoing president should be respected like an incoming president. An outgoing president who shows even a semblance of respect should be respected. But this outgoing president today tweeted he's not going to the inauguration. That hasn't happened in a long time. This outgoing president has not really conceded this election. He has still not conceded. He has said that there'll be a transfer of power. That he has said, but he's not conceded he's lost. This president deserves zero respect as he leaves, given his behavior, given what he's done over the last, well, I'd say over the last 5 years, but given what he's done over the last, 2 months since the election. Right? So the Democrats are going to milk this for everything that they can, and they're going to score major political points. And I know I've heard from a lot of people I think out there, who stood by Trump throughout almost everything, but who've now said enough's enough. And you can see that in the House, you can see it in the Senate, and you can see it among voters. But there is still a large group of people out there, a large group of Trump supporters who stand by the president. We saw pictures of them harassing Senator Graham in the airport and calling him a traitor. I think they're going to call many Republican senators traitor. And really, the only two that are going to get any respect in this crowd maybe are Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley. Maybe a couple of others who voted with them. Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz are now the candidates of that part of the Republican Party. But then the question really is, how big is that? How many people are involved? And to what extent does this really splinter? To what extent will those people vote for another Republican candidate if another Republican candidate gets the nomination? To what extent will those people vote in elections? Clearly, many of them did not vote in Georgia, and it's why the Democrats won both seats in Georgia. Is this the beginning of Democratic dominance in American politics because the Republicans are now so splintered, so much in disarray, so fragmented, so unfocused, that they won't be able to actually run a campaign, won't be able to actually win elections? I mean, the way the schedule's teed up is Republicans should gain seats, could retake the House, maybe even retake the Senate in 2 years. But is that even possible if this real split in the Republican Party continues? Now, there's a good question of should we care? And I'd say the only reason we should care is that this country needs an opposition party to the left. I mean, letting the left run free, run amok, the possibility of the left gaining seats in the House, gaining seats in the Senate in 2 years is truly scary. I think the next 2 years are pretty scary, although there are enough Democratic senators like Manchin of West Virginia who are on the margin who might restrain the leftist agenda. So maybe there'll be some restraint. But if they get a larger majority in the Senate, a larger majority in the House, then forget it. There'll be no restraint. There'll be no holding back the true agenda of the left of the Democratic Party. And I know many of you would like to blame me for that, because I didn't support Donald Trump. But you see, I blame you for that. I blame those people who supported Trump, those people who emboldened him, those people, particularly, and I'm really talking about the people here who are still justify everything that he is doing and are therefore destroying the whatever remnant there is of the Republican Party and its ability to oppose, ability to stand up to the Democrats. We need a Republican Party, or we need an opposition party. Maybe it's not a Republican Party anymore. We need an opposition party that can stand up to the far left, can stand up to the far right. Now, I think it's time for a new political party. I think it's time to create a new political party, not a political party, not an objectivist political party, not a libertarian political party, because I think those political parties are going to and will lose in a landslide. The country's clearly not interested in complete free markets and a return to or a discovery of individual rights. We're way too early for that kind of a political party. I mean, that's what we need to buy time so we can continue to educate people about the alternative to the Democrats and the Republicans, which would be a capitalist party one day. But in the meantime, what we need is a party that can just slow things down, a party that can just serve as an opposition to the Trump and to the left. A political party that maybe won't liberate the economy, but also won't enslave it. A political party that maybe won't be a complete defense for our individual rights, but a political party that won't advocate for their dissolution, for complete violation of rights. A political party that is generally will tilt towards more economic freedom, more social freedoms. A political party that basically will put a halt to the vast, dramatic, speedy increase in government spending, maybe work to reduce some regulation, work to make sure that freedom of speech is not eliminated. It's a political party that basically keeps us where we are today, maybe makes things a little bit better because you need to, because otherwise our economy is going to go to hell. We'll talk about that. That it's not, maybe, that certainly would not be open immigration, but maybe more pro-immigration. A political party that is more in our political world right now. I've always said, it's like, the world of politics, if you look at the spectrum, is individualism versus collectivism. But when you get closer to collectivism, it kind of branches into two. You've got the right-wing collectivism and the left-wing collectivism. Well, maybe a political party that sits at the intersection, that's still collectivist, but not quite all the way out there as right and left, center. That doesn't want government to grow and intervene more than it does today. But it's not an individualist political party, because that's too much to expect. I'd love to see the better senators and congressmen from the Republicans and the better senators and congressmen from the Democrats leave their political parties and start a new party. I don't think it's going to happen. I think most of them are too cowardly to do it. There's no real leadership there to rally them around it. Unfortunately, many of the better Republicans, the ones who stood up to Trump when it was appropriate, like Ben Sasse, are too religious to give up on religion as a key factor of this. I just don't see where we go from here. AJ, thank you. And yes, the interview with Lex Freedom, I enjoyed it immensely. And I'm hoping to do a part two. If Lex is on right now, Lex sometimes is on. But if Lex listens, please invite me back. I'd love to do a part two. I seem to be engaged in this discussion with Michael Malice about anarchism through Lex Friedman. So maybe we can continue that discussion through Lex. Although I plan to do a show on Malice's comments, about my comments about anarchy. We'll do that. We'll do a show on that soon, so that we can lay out, kind of in a respectful way, because I respect Lex, lay out my answers to his challenges. So I don't know where politics goes from here. I think Republicans have suffered a brutal, devastating blow. Now, the last time Republicans suffered such a blow was with Nixon. They lost the election. They lost, significant numbers in the House and the Senate. I hope that doesn't happen now, because the Jimmy Carter left was far, far to the right of the, Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, Nancy Pelosi left. So I hope Democrats don't gain a lot, but they could. They very well could, and I would blame Donald Trump for that. And then beyond that, maybe, in the 1970s, the result ultimately was the rise of Ronald Reagan. That had negative consequences for the Republican Party, but also some positive consequences for the American people. And maybe this is an opportunity for rebirth. Maybe this is an opportunity for some new ideas. Maybe this is an opportunity for the better people. Maybe what happened Wednesday will marginalize Josh Hawley. I mean, one of the good things that happened out of Wednesday, if I can say so, one of the good things that happened on Wednesday was that Josh Hawley has lost support from his mentor, the previous senator from his state. He lost his book deal, and he lost his biggest donor. So Josh Hawley, who I thought was the worst of the senators and the heir apparent, but much smarter, much more intellectual, and much scarier than Donald Trump, Josh Hawley, a committed nationalist conservative, a committed, I think, anti-founding fathers, he is probably, we'll see if this plans out, but at least it looks like he might have been marginalized by what happened Wednesday, marginalized from the Republican Party. We'll see. He'll definitely get the Trump support, right? He'll definitely get those voters, the voters who will not abandon Trump, who stay by his side, who will not, who think God. I mean, I saw a post by somebody, an interview with somebody who said basically, I wanted to keep this. I don't know. Anyway, it's gone. I'll try to find this quote, but it's a quote from the Pillow guy, My Pillow guy, the CEO of My Pillow. And he says, God has chosen Donald Trump for 8-year term. It doesn't matter if he appears to have lost the election. God has chosen him for 8 years. He will have 8 years because that is God's wish. That kind of stuff's scary. Anyway, those people who truly believe Donald Trump was selected by God, they might vote for Hawley. But, I think Hawley's chances for being president took a real hit. We'll see. And I think the same is, I don't think Ted Cruz had a chance either way. But, because I think Josh Hawley is more committed to these ideas than Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is a chameleon. He goes to where he thinks the power base is. He was like a free market kind of, it was a free market advocate when he thought that would get him power in the Republican Party. He became a committed evangelical when he thought that would get him power. He became a committed Trumpist when he thought that would get him power. Ted Cruz is finished. But Hawley, I hope, is now finished. And we'll see. We'll see who replaces. I noticed Nikki Haley was making statements yesterday condemning Trump, condemning what happened. This might be an opportunity for some of the better people in the Republican Party to stand up, to be counted, to be a little radical, to cleanse the party a little bit. We'll see. We'll see if they have the courage. We'll see if they have the balls to do it. And we'll see if something good can come of what has just happened. If what happens from this is a discrediting of the Trump phenomena, if what happens from this is a discrediting of some of the bad parts of the Trump agenda, if what happens for this is a discrediting of Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, and maybe some energy granted to some of the better people in the Republican Party, maybe something good happens out of this, and maybe we get a revitalized Republican Party. The Democrats better be careful because while they're trying to create as much strife within the Republican Party, if they take this as a mandate for some of their more wacky policies, then the country will turn against them very quickly, and who knows who will be the beneficiary of that. In the meantime, I think the Democrats are doing what they can to create as much mayhem on the right as possible. I found it interesting that I've been watching a little bit of television. I find it interesting that there are people at Fox who are still defending Trump. There are people at Fox that are still insinuating that Antifa is somehow behind this. All the people identified as Antifa people all turned out to be QAnon and supporters of Trump. I find it interesting. There's still people at Fox, and I'm sure elsewhere on the right, who are insisting this election was stolen. Again, providing no evidence. I noticed that Trump lawyers have withdrawn the last lawsuits in Georgia, have withdrawn basically all their legal challenges to whatever, as far as I can tell, to whatever's still outstanding out there. Enough embarrassment, I guess, is enough. 62-0 is probably enough for them. It's going to be interesting to see how all this evolves and what consequences it has. But right now, the consequence looks like a splintering of the Republican Party and a big victory for the Democrats. Big. These will be images, talking points, campaign slogans that the Democrats are going to run for a long time. And I think, unfortunately, I think successfully, because Republicans deserve it. Unfortunately, Republicans deserve it at this point. All right, let's see. Capitalist Nick says, a centrist, just taking some questions that are within what we're talking about here. The centrist GOP and Trump are heading for a split. Will the split be where the centrists go on their own to form a new party or take back the GOP brand? What is the preferable outcome? I mean, my preferable outcome is a new party. I think the GOP brand is gone, but I think a centrist party could attract suburban voters. If you look at exit polls or polls generally of how people vote, and you ask a question in those polls about people who ask them, do you think the government regulates business too much? An overwhelming majority of people answer that question is yes, even though many of them vote Democratic. So the ideal would be to create a political party that can capture the general inclination of many Americans, a majority of Americans, are wanting more limited government. Because they want a limited government, but without the wackiness that is Trump and it is the Trump agenda. So they want more sanity. And to the extent that these, call them centrist or whatever you want to call them, can provide that, I think they can create a political party that's more important and more influential and more powerful than the Republican Party, and draw certain people from the Democratic Party who do not want to be associated with AOC and Elizabeth Warren and call it their far wacky left. And as the far left grows, as the far left expands, more and more people on the left will want to escape. And you've got to give them somewhere to go. Sorry, Joao, I guess it's Joao. I forget how you pronounce those letters in Portuguese. But no, Trump lost. He lost by 7 million votes, and he lost the Electoral College by, significantly. And there's just zero evidence of any other possible outcome. There is no evidence of that. By the way, another interesting thing that happened today is that Dominion, the company that produces many of the voting machines that are used in many states, has sued the Trump former lawyer. I forget her name now. The Trump lawyer. They've sued the Trump lawyer for $1.3 billion for defamation. So this is great because now she will have her day in court, right? She will have her day in court where she will be able, $1.3 billion. Sidney Powell, what many of you consider this heroic lawyer, who discovered the truth and unearthed the truth about the Dominion conspiracy, she will now have an opportunity in court to lay out all the evidence in support of her claim that Dominion stole the elections. Dominion will have an opportunity to defend themselves. This will be both in front of, I assume, a judge and a jury, and maybe we all will get some indication we will all get that information. So anybody who's objectively really interested in discovering the truth will have all the information. We'll have crazy Sidney Powell's, quote, evidence, and you'll have Dominion's defense, and you'll be able to tell. I know the answer. There's no doubt in my mind that Dominion did not steal this election, but you will have the evidence. You will be able to assess. You will get the best case by this top lawyer, Sidney Powell, and you'll be able to estimate. And Joao and all these other guys will be able to see, I think, maybe if they're open to evidence, if they're open to facts, they're able to see what a wacko she is and how there is no, capital N, evidence that this election was stolen. Here, the authoritarians are out. As I said, ban President of China. I think I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be living in a country where you can ban the president, like the Twitter has and Facebook has, and not go to jail. Imagine if a social media company tried to do that to Xi or to any Chinese official in China. So I'm glad that I still live in a free country where the president of the United States can be banned from entering my maybe not from entering a restaurant, that you can, but maybe from using my platform, my business platform. Cool. I think that's amazing. Angelo says all traders need their day before military tribunal. Yeah, Angelo, I've taken note of your threat. That's exactly how authoritarians speak, and I know there is a whole band of these authoritarian rightists who have been on my YouTube feed for 5-6 years now, and yeah, I've learned a lot from you. Thank you for being here. I've learned who what you stand for. It wasn't too hard to see what it constituted. Well, I assume you were talking about me. I didn't assume all traders need their day before military tribunal. I'm not saying. I assume you're talking about me. Otherwise, I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But I assume you were saying that I'm a traitor and one day I will face a military tribunal. But yes, traders, real traders, actual traders should be in front of a military tribunal. All right. Yeah, they just, somebody says they just released a video of Dominion workers admitting that their machines can be connected via Wi-Fi. The machine can be connected, some are parts of the machine, but not the pad, which this guy claimed you could connect Wi-Fi. None of this is real, guys. This will have its day at court. You'll be able to read the testimony. You'll be able to see that none of that is real. None of that is real. Your fantasies will not come true. Donald Trump will not be president on January 21st. None of this will actually happen. Oh my God. You are entertaining. You are actually entertaining. So It's good to see. It's interesting to see people who, have abandoned reality and yet stick with it. Stick with it. Keep on with the anti-reality mentality. Hold on to the anti-reality for. It doesn't matter what evidence you provide. It doesn't matter what reality is there. It doesn't matter who says what. They will stick. It's a religion. It's exactly what it is. It's a religion. And this is what I said on Wednesday. It's a Trump religion. Trump religion. It's a religion of Trump. This is about the personality. This is about the individual. This is not about the sanctity of elections. This is not about whether the election were fair or not. This is not about justice. This is not about dominion. This is not about anything to do with the American system of government other than that the man, Donald Trump, lost. And that is just unacceptable. It is impossible for people to accept. It's impossible for people to embrace, impossible for people to internalize, and they will fight it irrationally forever because it is a religion. It's a religion focused around a man. This is the people out there with flags, Trump flags wrapped around their body. It's not about America. Yeah, Nick, somebody asked me about my opinion on Nick Fuentes. I wish you'd use Super Chat because you're getting in out of line, but Nick Fuentes is an anti-Semitic, racist nutcase. He is a immoral bastard, and he is now he's claiming. The last claim I heard Nick Fuentes make was that the video of Trump basically saying there's going to be a peaceful transition of power to Biden on January 20th. That is a deep fake. That is where somebody created a video of Donald Trump, but it's not really Donald Trump because Donald Trump, God, the Son of God, Donald Trump would never, ever concede this election. Donald Trump would never allow for a peaceful transition of power. So it's obviously a deep fake. It's obviously not true. It's obviously the deep state released this video. It's not real. Biden is horrible. Biden is despicable. Biden is terrible. But Donald Trump had to lose because Donald Trump was going to do more damage to America than anybody else and he's done it. And maybe it's too late, but because he was going to, and has, I think, and the more he would have stayed in power, the more he would have done. He was going to destroy the Republican Party. He was going to destroy any opposition the Democrats might ever have. Now, it could be that in his last 2 weeks as president, he has actually succeeded in doing what I feared he would do in a second term, which is destroy the party and make sure that the Democrats win every election from now until eternity. The United States is not going to become third world. People have no understanding of what it means to be third world. They have no understanding of what it means to be America. They have no understanding of what the left is. Obama didn't turn this country into a third world country. Biden isn't going to turn this country into a third world country. As terrible and as awful and as horrible as he is. And if you really want to stop this country from becoming third world, then you need an opposition party to the left. And the opposition party, is just being destroyed by Donald Trump, which is one of my points for 5 years that I've been making about why I was so worried about Trump as president. He was going to destroy the meek, pathetic, weak opposition party that was the Republican Party. And he has, it appears. All right, let's see. How can you become known in the objectivist community? I don't understand that question. Am I not known in the objectivist community? What does that question mean? Yeah, Hatta asks, how can you become known in the objectivist community? Who's you? Anyway, I don't understand. So you're gonna have to clarify what you meant by that, Hunter, because I did not understand it. Um, what do you make of the Republican Party turning their backs on Pence since he didn't follow orders? Is Pence happy to be rid of Trump? Yeah, I think Pence is happy to be rid of Trump. I think Pence is finished because Pence stood by Trump for 4 years. So Pence is politically finished. He's not going to get the pro-Trump vote because he's viewed now as betraying Trump. He's not going to get the anti-Trump Republican vote because he was part of the Trump administration, stood by Trump for 4 years and excused and justified and defended all of Trump's actions, including the ludicrous claim that this election was stolen. So I think while Pence is happy to be rid of Trump, I think his idea that the vice presidency would launch him into the lead candidate for the presidency of the United States in 4 years, that is out the window. That is gone. That will not happen. Pence is now, I mean, you can see Pence. Pence is a nothing. He's a nobody. He'll twist with the wind. He could have stood up to Trump many times in the past. He could have been a voice of reason within administration many times in the past, and he didn't. He's pissed off because Trump asked him to do something clearly unconstitutional, and he said no, and Trump got angry with him. Oh, poor Pence. But he stood by as Trump has said the most outrageous things, the most ridiculous things, the most anti-American things possible. He stood by when Trump tarnished the reputation of the American intelligence agency. Not that I'm a defender of them, but in the name of Putin, while defending Putin. He stood by when Trump went and hugged and drooled over the brutal dictator of North Korea. He stood by when Trump did all this nonsense. So he has nobody to blame for being angry right now than himself. So good riddance to Pence. There have been 24 resignations in the Trump administration in the last week. All the Trump rats are now in free fall and abandoning its sinking ship. Will Trump make it to the finish line? I think he will. I mean, I think one of the ideas originally was that he would resign, Pence would step in, and Pence would pardon him. Well, now I'm not sure Pence would pardon him, right? So I'm not sure Pence would pardon him. So, I don't think that Trump will resign. Trump will stick it through. He'll make sure to pardon everybody. He'll try to pardon himself if that's possible for something he hasn't yet been prosecuted for. So it'll be interesting to see if that's even possible. Yeah, I think he'll make it through because I think impeachment will not. I think what Republicans' tactics will be with impeachment is to slow down the process so that it doesn't get voted on, so they don't have to take a stand before January 20th, and then it becomes irrelevant. So that, in my view, is the Republican tactics, is to prevent it from coming to a vote. Now, there's only so much they can do because they cannot use the filibuster against an impeachment. So they'll have to use other procedural methods to drag it out. But anyway, I'll be very glad not to talk about Trump anymore. Let's see. Pence has some good points. He was a team player. Being a team player on a bad team, on a team you should leave, is not a virtue. All right, last question, and then I want to talk about COVID, and then we'll go back to the super chat questions. Can Joe Biden be viewed as a Paul von Hindenburg? He's the one who appointed Hitler. Type of figure just before the takeover of Hitler. Kamala Harris, dangerous and waiting in the wings. Kamala Harris is not that dangerous. I mean, I don't know why Kamala Harris, has become this idea of she is the Hitler of our time. She's an authoritarian. She's just waiting to take over and the world will come to an end. I mean, she's terrible. She's awful. She's a leftist. But the far left hates Kamala Harris. She has a history in California of being for example, I mean, I've mentioned this example in the past, but it's kind of you could research this and you can find out when she ran for attorney general and she needed kind of the leftist vote, the far left vote. One of the things she said was, Kamala Harris is a nothing. She'll do what she thinks will get her reelected, which is be a centrist, because that's what'll get her reelected. Kamala Harris said at the time, she told the far left, she said, I would never, never prosecute anybody with a death penalty because I don't believe in the death penalty. Death penalty is immoral, just as you believe. As soon as she became Attorney General, she started prosecuting people with the death penalty. She had no problem. White, black, didn't matter. Minorities, she prosecuted with the death penalty. She was an Attorney General who was way too conservative, way too to the right of the far left. She doesn't believe in anything. She wants power. She wants to be president. Yeah, I know her record in California. I lived in California while she was Attorney General here. She put tons of people in jail for non-crimes. Yes, everybody does. That's not the left. That's what California passed, all kinds of laws that put people in jail for a long time, passed by conservatives. So Kamala Harris is no friend of liberty. She's no friend of freedom. She's not a good person. She's a bad person. She's an authoritarian. She's a power luster primarily. But she's not Hitler. She's not AOC. She's not even Elizabeth Warren. She will govern in a way that secures her to win. Why did she put all these people in jail in California? Because California, in spite of being left, California, in spite of being very socialist, if you will, in its economic policy, California is very much, has been historically, a kind of a, quote, supposed law and order state. It's a state that believes in putting people in jail. It's very, quote, conservative when it comes to drugs and comes to things like that. So Kamala Harris knew where the voters were, tilted to the right, and did it. You know, Joe, saying something over and over and over and again doesn't make it true. You haven't provided one iota, 1 ounce, 1 microbe of evidence. You just keep repeating the same thing over and over again, which shows your weakness, right? It shows the weakness. Because if you knew that that were true, other than as an item of religious dogma, which is what I think it is, Trump won the election by a lot, is religious dogma at this point. It is, the reason is out the window. It's just faith. If it wasn't just faith, if it was reason, then you'd present a list of evidence, and you would look forward to the Dominion trial, this trial, and because all the evidence will come out, and you will be shown to be right that Dominion manufactured all this. But why would Dominion take this to court if they were afraid of being found out? Maybe because they've got nothing to hide. Maybe because they didn't do anything wrong. I suspect that's the case. Nothing, I've seen no evidence, zero evidence that there's any problem with, I'm not saying Dominion machines are perfect, but any reason to believe, Smartmatic equals Venezuela, but you don't know anything about Smartmatic. What's the relation between Smartmatic and Dominion? And when was Smartmatic founded? And who are the founders? And what have they done since? I actually researched this whole Smartmatic equals Venezuela connection. And it's bogus. It's just not true. It's true that the founders of Smartmatic were Venezuelan, living in Miami, incorporating in Miami. But there's no relationship with them and the Venezuela regimes. And there's no relation between them and Dominion. And there's no relation between them and the Democratic Party. So, it's astounding that you just repeat mythology. You're not presenting facts. You're presenting religion. You're presenting talking points. You're presenting what you were told, but you haven't done the basic research. Because if you did the research, you discovered that that is all a fallacy. All right. Why didn't you try to explain your thinking about Trump or clearly to Lena Peacock before the election? as I said the other day, I'm not going to comment on my personal discussions with Leonard about the election. It's just there's nothing to be gained for me, for anybody, by doing that. So I'm just not. Stop asking me because I'm not going to do it. Do you think there is going to be violence on the 20th inauguration? I don't know. I think there might be, but I don't know. I don't have any inside information. I didn't know there was going to be violence this time, even though it was on bulletin boards and it was all over the web. And I should have thought of it because people on my chat told me that they were sure that come January 6th, Trump would be confirmed as president. The only way to do that is through some kind of coup. So I assume some people had some plan and thought maybe the military would join them or something. I mean, it was absurd and ridiculous, badly planned, badly thought out, irrational, faith-based nonsense. But that's what this is deteriorating into. So I don't know if there's going to be violence. I don't expect it. I think the response and the fact that what happened Wednesday didn't lead to a, quote, revolution, didn't lead the military to rise up, and actually led Donald Trump to kind of back off and retreat and go hide under his desk. Maybe that will encourage people not to commit violence. Can I explain why Democrats and Republicans are the same in principle? They differ on issues of freedom. Democrats are calling for more draconian policies. I think they're the same on principle. They are all statists. They all believe in an important role for the state in governing our behavior, our economic behavior, our behavior in our, Republicans would like to dictate our behavior in the bedrooms. Democrats would like to dictate our behavior in the boardrooms. But generally, they all want you to be subservient to the state, to the country. That's what nationalism, in the way it's being used within the Republican Party today, means. It means the common good. It means the oppression of the individual for the sake of the state. I think Republicans are victims of that, of course, commit that. And I think absolutely the same thing you can see on the Democratic side. The Democratic side, they want you to sacrifice, not for the state maybe, but for the proletarian, if they're Marxist, or for the minorities, if they're critical race theory, but they want your sacrifice as an individual, both parties. So if you're looking at principles, they both are anti-individualist. Both the Republicans and the Democrats are anti-individualist. When it comes to economics, I saw 4 years of Donald Trump with government spending going through the roof. Government spending increase every single year, dramatically, significantly. An expansion of government power in all kinds of realms. Yes, some shrinkage of government power at the regulatory agencies, some positive things in energy and positive things sprinkled here and there. But a rhetoric that was collectivist, a rhetoric that was anti-individualist, and actual government spending, which I take as a real proxy for government intervention in our lives, increasing year after year after year, and no advocacy for anything that would shrink government spending, that would liberate the individual, no advocacy for example, for reforming entitlements, or for passing legislation that would actually shrink the regulatory state, that would actually have permanence. What do Republicans stand for? They don't stand for individual liberty. I saw under Donald Trump's administration, I saw 2 or 3 different antitrust lawsuits against Google. That's not individualism. That's not capitalism. That's not freedom. I saw under the Trump administration tariffs, a dramatic increase, a significant increase of taxes on Americans through tariffs. Tariffs are paid by the consumers. Every economist who can call himself an economist knows that. By consumers, that is a tax increase on Americans. I saw tariffs that an attempt to manipulate what Americans buy in the name of reducing the trade deficit, which is a joke because trade deficits are not a problem. By the way, just as an aside, the trade deficit in November was the highest under Donald Trump, was the highest it's been since 2006, in 14 years. So all those tariffs backfired on Trump. And by the way, I predicted that. I said that the trade deficits are not going to be impacted by the tariffs. I explained how it impacts currencies and so on, and what the real motivations of the Chinese to sell us stuff are, and so on. I predicted that. I'm not going to get any credit for that, but I predicted that, right? As I predicted much of what happened under the Trump administration. And I predicted, in a sense, I predicted Wednesday, because I told you that Trump was the candidate of chaos. Trump would destroy the Republican Party. I said all these things. For 5 years I've been saying it. And it's happening. What else about the Republican Party? So the Republican Party are not the party of capitalism. They're a party of, and now more than ever, you're seeing this rise of national conservatism, where they want industrial policy. Republicans want to have in America industrial policy. What does it mean to say bring the jobs back if not industrial policy? So they're like the left. And there are elements within the Republican Party that are clearly unequivocally xenophobic. There are elements within the Republican Party that are racist. Now, the Democrats are racist too. The far left is also racist. But again, on principles, on the fundamental ideas, what's the difference? They're both collectivists. They're both statists. They both don't believe in free speech. I mean, just listen to how Donald Trump would speak about the media. I mean, as biased as the media is, as awful as the media is, his threats to Jeff Bezos to regulate Amazon because of what the Washington Post was writing about Donald Trump, that's a direct threat that relates to First Amendment. So yes, the left wants to eliminate free speech, but so does the right. So no, left and right, in my view, are horrific. Today, there is a better element on the right. There is no better element on the left. But Donald Trump did everything he could to suppress and destroy the better element within the Republican Party. And that's what I said for 4 years. I said what Donald Trump will do is he'll destroy the better element within the Republican Party. There is an element within the Republican Party that respects the founding fathers. There's an element in the Republican Party that respects capitalism, at least as some form, not some form of capitalism, watered down capitalism. It's at least something. There's an element in the Republican Party that respects free speech and respects the founding constitution and the founding documents of this country. And that element was suppressed by Donald Trump. So I wanted Donald Trump defeated. I hoped that Republicans would win the Senate, so that would be a check on what Biden did. But I wanted Donald Trump to be defeated. I wanted him defeated so that the better element in the Republican Party could rise up and dominate. I still am hopeful that that will happen. What happened Wednesday has reduced the probability of that, because I think more and more better Americans are going to turn to Democrats, unfortunately. But that is my hope. That is my hope. So I want those Republicans who respect the Constitution, those Republicans that respect individual rights, at least to some extent, those Republicans that respect capitalism, at least to some extent, I want them to dominate. And I want the Trumpists, Tucker Carlsonists, Hannity-ists, whatever you want to call them, I want them gone. I want them not to have influence within the Republican Party. Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, I want them gone. And I want the better people. I want the better people. And if there are no better people, then we're screwed. Then we are screwed. Republicans are traitors. They're traitors to the Constitution. Democrats are traitors, but Trump is a traitor. Trump is a traitor to the Constitution and has been a traitor to the Constitution basically from day one. But, that's the world in which we live. What do you think has motivated Ted Cruz's descent into irrationality? I don't think he was ever particularly rational. I think Ted Cruz is a power luster. And he basically has gone and moved around the Republican Party in search of power, in search of a power base. He went free market, he went evangelical, he went Trumpist. Who knows what the next incarnation of Ted Cruz will be, but he will continuously shift to where he thinks the power base is. Ugh, I hate talking so much about politics. Frank says, you're the eye of the hurricane, the oasis in the desert. Thanks for providing a foundation for my sketch thoughts. My pleasure, Frank. I do this because I love it and believe it, and I'm really hopeful that over time, we can actually make a difference, have an impact. Can you ask Lex to speak to Joe Rogan for you? I know they're buddies. I will. Yes, the next big thing is to get on Joe Rogan show. That will be big. All right, before I do the other super chat questions, let me just do this little analysis of COVID. I hope you guys are interested in this, but so you hear a lot about the false positives in PCR tests. The PCR tests are too sensitive, and what happens is they'll pick up other viruses or other things, and you'll get false positives. And that this is a big problem. And this means that the numbers we have gotten around the prevalence of COVID have been blown out of proportion. So I want to give you a little analysis of this, because in a sense, there's some truth to this. But I want to make it clear when this is relevant and when it's not relevant and what the truth is. All right, so we're going to run some numbers. So if you've got a pad of paper and you want to write stuff down, this is a good time to just write stuff down so that you get kind of the how the numbers impact this. Okay, so we're going to assume, and I think this is very close to reality. The reality is that the false positive rate of PCR test is about 0.5%. So 0.5% of the people who get tested will have a positive result when they're actually negative. Now, there's some debate in the literature whether it's 0.5% or less or closer to 1%. Maybe it's 1%, and we can run the numbers on 1% too, but it's not more than 1%. And it's probably not less than 0.5%, probably somewhere between 0.5% and 1%. So let's take 0.5% for now. We can play around with 1% in a minute. All right? So 0.5% means that if you test 1,000 people, of the people, if you test 1,000 people, 5 of them are going to test positive when they shouldn't. Right? If you test 1,000 people, 5 of them will test positive when they shouldn't. Now, is this a big deal or isn't it? Well, it depends. If, when you're doing this test, a very small number of people are actually infected with COVID, and this applies to any test, are actually infected with COVID. Let's say that only 5% of the people are actually infected with COVID, and you test 1,000, right? Then 50 people will test positive, or maybe 55, but let's say 50 people for simplicity. And 5 of them will be 5 of them, right? So if it's 5% positivity, 50 will test and 5 of them, 10%, will be false. Now, 10% is a large number. 10% is significant. So of the 50 that tested positive, 10% are actually negative. That skews the number. It changes our interpretation a little bit of what's going on. Right? Now imagine that 10% of the people are testing positive. 10% of the people are testing positive. Now you've got 100 people. Now you've got 100 people who've tested positive. It's still true that 5 of them are not positive. They're actually negative. Now it's only 5%. 5 out of 100. Okay, 5% is not trivial, But it doesn't change policy. It doesn't change hospital preparedness. There's still 95 people who are positive. And whatever that implies in terms of the severity of the disease, how many people show up in the hospital, how many people ultimately land up in ICUs. So the fact that there are 5 people who actually tested positive, who are actually in reality negative, is insignificant at that point. Or of little significant at that point. Okay? Little significant at that point. Now, somebody says the false positives that people are talking about are people who were positive in past and still shed inactive RNA. The PCR test is good at finding the viral RNA, but doesn't detect other viruses. So yeah, so if you were tested positive, if you tested positive for COVID, don't get another PCR test because you're going to test positive over and over and over again in the future, even though you're no longer infectious. But anybody was going to tell that. I mean, we were told that by people who, as some of you know, my wife tested positive for COVID, and she was told by the person who gave her the news, don't test again for at least a month because you'll keep testing positive. Even though once the symptoms are gone, 14 days or 10 days, actually it's 10 days, you're free to go. No, the issue here is that I've seen videos of this, I've seen scientists, I've seen epidemiologists make this claim, that the fact that there's so many false positives invalidates the PCR test. But that's ludicrous in cases where a significant percentage of those being tested are positive. I'll give you an example. In Idaho right now, in the state of Idaho right now, 55.6% of people being tested are positive. 55.6%, more than 50. Which means out of every 1,000 who get tested, 556 are positive. Of those, 5, it's a false positive. Does that matter? No, it's irrelevant. It doesn't make any difference. Are things really bad in Idaho in terms of the number of people that got COVID? Yes. The false positives are not going to affect that conclusion. Now, I understand that people don't study statistics and don't think these problems through and don't actually run the numbers, but then don't comment on it. I said this about the doctors, the California doctors a while back who came out and had all these statistics, and they were wrong. The statistics were wrong. They had good intentions. Much of what they said about the disease were right, but the statistics, the way they did it, everything they said about it was wrong. By the way, California right now, California has a 14.3% positivity rate. Now, I think it's much lower than Idaho because California has massive amounts of testing. Massive amounts of testing. You can't drive around Orange County and not bump into several places that are testing for COVID. There are a lot of them. So a lot of testing going on. So if you test a lot, the positivity rate is probably going to be lower. Idaho, my guess, is testing only people with symptoms. That's why they have such a high positivity rate. Anyway, in California, it's 14.3. So 143 people for every 1,000 tested, of which 5 are false positives. I don't think that's significant. It's not going to change whether it's 138 or 143. It's not going to change anything. It's not going to change policy. It's not going to change our approach to COVID. California's got problems with its emergency rooms. They're packed, not because of the false positives. So if you send me a video claiming here's the latest and greatest in COVID, please make sure that at least it adds up. The math adds up. Even if the false positivity rate is 1%, then now we're talking about 10. So if there are 143 per 1,000, 10 of which are false positive. Okay, that's inflating the numbers a little bit. It should be 133, not 143. Does it change anything fundamental? No. The only time the false positive rate is important is when there are very few cases. It's when almost nobody is testing positive. Then, let's say only 10 people test positive. God, half of them are false. I don't know which, but if they're only 10, then half, 10 out of 1,000, right? Then it's important. Before you leave, guys, if you could give us a thumbs up. We've had well over 200 people watching the show. We've only got 90 thumbs up. Like the show. It really helps the algorithms on YouTube. If you find value in what I'm doing, you're not going to hear this analysis of false positive rates, this analysis of the COVID testing anywhere else. I think I'm right. Now, if there's an expert on statistics or an expert in COVID out there who thinks I'm wrong, please let me know. I'm pretty confident in what I just said is true. Right? So please give it a thumbs up before you leave. Make sure you give it. I know some of you are in and out and going in and out, but before you leave, just click that things up. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. We need to get subscribers up. Don't forget to share, particularly my short videos, but share this. Let's get the word out there. Let's get people engaged with this show. Let's get people interested in this show and more, let's get the word out there. You can do that by sharing the content from this channel. And of course, if you want to provide value for value, you get some value from listening to the show, from watching the show, I hope, then, I encourage you to become a supporter of the show. You can become a supporter of the show like Charlie just did by using Super Chat to make a contribution or to ask a question. But you can also support the show on YourOnBookShow.com/support. You can support the show on Patreon, on Subscribestar, and on Locals. And if you want, even on Vimeo. So on every platform, possible, your support of the show allows me to devote real time to doing this. This takes time. This takes research. This takes putting stuff together. And that requires income. It just does. So it's your support. There's my cough. It's your support that makes that possible. So please show the value you see in what I do by supporting me, by supporting the show financially. All right. So in other words, the false positivity rate right now, when positivity rates are so high, is, I'm sorry to tell you guys, irrelevant. I mean, if it was relevant, it was 5% or 10%. But at 1%, it's irrelevant. At 0.5%, it's certainly irrelevant. So, and now, I suspect that the entire way in which we're testing, the entire approach to testing right now is wrong, that there are real problems with it. I am a huge advocate of antigen tests that are cheap and that you can do at home and you can do every day rather than PCR tests. But that's not the direction this world has gone in, which I think is awful. I think if we'd gotten those antigen tests at home, easy tests that you can do yourself, that cost $1 a test, that you could do every day before you went out, then that would have crushed this. It would have crushed this whole pandemic. It would have halted it, because you would have basically, if you're positive, you stay home, you don't infect people, and if you're negative, you're probably 90-something%, you're fine to go out and engaged in normal activity. The economy wouldn't have crashed. You just saw unemployment numbers, 140,000 more unemployed people this month than in the past, than last month. So economy's heading in the wrong direction. All of that was avoidable if we'd gotten our testing regime right. But this administration messed up testing from day one, and then denied the need for testing later on, and denied the resources for testing. Anyway, it's been an unmitigated disaster. But testing is the solution. It's just a matter of doing it right and getting rid of these pathetic, ridiculous lockdowns that don't seem to help. I mean, California has been in so-called lockdown, and yet cases are through the roof. ICUs are through the roof. Hospital capacity is through the roof of COVID. And instead of the hysteria, instead of the panic, instead of the lockdowns, instead of the infringement of rights, freedom, the freedom for companies to produce tests, the freedom of companies to offer us as individuals testing mechanisms that would have allowed us to go back to normal without any or very few problems, That was denied to us by our political class of both parties, So it's pathetic. All right, let's do some of these questions. How can Dim argue that a reaction to nihilism is what will bring about authoritarianism when it's ideas that bring about authoritarianism, not reactions? Yeah, so Dim, I encourage you to read Dim because I cannot do it justice. It is a brilliant book. But it's hard. It's hard. The point is not that it's just some boomerang. The point is not that it's some pendulum that just swings to the other side. The point is that human beings need to integrate. Integration is a human need, if you will. It's a need of consciousness. We need integration to sustain life in any kind of way. We need to see integrations. We need to believe that the world can integrate. We need to be integrating our ideas around some principles, ideas. And when we don't, when everything is disintegrated, when everything falls apart, then everything falls apart. And what we do when things are falling apart around us is we look for an integration. We look to make sense of the world. We look for an explanation that explains what's happening because we need explanations. It's why we have religion. It's why we desire philosophy. It's why we seek out principles and ideas, because human beings to survive need to be able to explain the world around them, need to understand it, explain it, and act in it. And when that explanation is gone, when everything is in disintegration, when everything is fragmented, when everything is chaos, this is where I agree with Jordan Peterson's arguments about the destructive nature of chaos. Chaos is unbelievably destructive. People seek an integration. Now, it would be great if they sought a rational integration. That's I in the Dim hypothesis. A rational integration integrates around reality, integrates based on reason, integrates around the individual and individual liberty and freedom, and ultimately politically integrates around capitalism as a political system. But the voice of the I's is very small. There are not many of us. There are not many of us who believe in reality, reason, and rights. Reality, reason, rights. There's a good way to remember. Reality, reason, rights. 3 R's. And therefore, when people are looking to integrate, what they often discover are misintegrations, sets of ideas. It's still ideas. Sets of ideas that integrate around a false premise. The most obvious of these, and the ones that Leonard Peikoff focuses on in Dim, or one of the ones he focuses on in Dim, he focuses on the one he believes is the one that will dominate in America, is religion. Religion is an integration around a false idea about reality, a false idea about knowledge, and a false idea ultimately about politics. But when things disintegrate, people look for integration because that's what the mind does. That's what human consciousness requires. And when they start integrating around a false idea like religion, that leads them to embrace those ideas. And those ideas, Leonard argues, lead a false integration and misintegration, what he calls a misintegration. If it's radical enough, if it's dramatic enough, if it's big enough, what he calls an M2 versus an M1, consistent enough. What's consistent with religion in politics? Authoritarianism. So you go to authoritarianism through the ideas. The ideas are the religious ideas. Or the ideas are a misintegration around race, the Nazis. Or potentially misintegration around some other form of collectivism that tries to explain the world through a false misintegration. It's two negatives, I guess. Through a misintegration. and people accept those ideas because they integrate. Oh, now I can see what's going on in the world. I can understand it. They abandon the disintegration, but as part of the package of this misintegration, they adopt authoritarianism. Now, again, that is a massive injustice to Leonard, because I don't think I can do complete justice to them. Certainly, I don't think anybody can do it in a few minutes, because it's a book, and the importance of integration and why it's a necessity and all of that requires a book, and how the paths go, and he shows how it's played out in history and what happens in history. But certainly the ideas in DIM don't undo the ideas in Nominus Parallels. Ideas drive history. Ideas determine history. The emphasis Leonard places is on this epistemological point about the role of integration, which I think is crucial. I mean, it made sense to me when I read it. I can't claim to fully understand it, but I encourage you guys to read it if you want to understand the world. All right, my perspective is to save as much freedom as we can as we can fight. I agree. So we have a much better chance with the right than with the left. I disagree. The left will destroy things fast. They clamp down on freedom quickly. We see this with COVID. I don't agree with that. I think that, and I said this constantly about Trump, I think that the right is far more destructive, because the right has no opposition. The right is not opposed. So when it clamps down on freedom, the left says, yeah, we support that. And nobody voices any disagreement with that clamping down on freedom. When the right screws up, that emboldens and strengthens the left. When the right screws up, like on Wednesday, the left becomes more powerful. So it's much, much more important to denounce the right when it's wrong and embolden the elements on the right that might be better. But to embrace the collectivists on the right is to empower the worst elements on the right and the worst elements on the left. Because the Donald Trumps of the right cannot win long term. He lost in 4 years, not because of me, not because of my YouTube show. He lost because of him. Republicans lost Georgia not because of me, not because of those of us who oppose Donald Trump. They lost Georgia because of Donald Trump, because of where Donald Trump took the Republican Party. And Republicans might get slaughtered in the next election, and might have no courage to stand up to the left in the next 2 years, not because of me, not because of anything I say on the show, not because of you, not because those of us who are critical of Trump, but because of Donald Trump's action over the last 2 months. So when you sanction somebody who does really, really, really bad things, then you are supporting your own destruction. And that's what I think happened with Trump. By sanctioning him, by supporting him, by embracing him, we have supported our own destruction. We've supported the destruction of the Republican Party. We've emboldened the Democrats, and we've made this. Look, judge me by my predictions and what happened. Did I say Donald Trump would lead to a disintegration in the Republican Party? I did. And it did. Did I say that Donald Trump was likely to lead to strengthening of the left? I did. Did it lead to strengthening of the left? Absolutely. The strengthening of the far left. Did I say that Donald Trump would lead to a defeat of the Republican Party in the elections? Ultimately? Yes, I did. Did it happen? Yes. So, I don't support the left. I hate the left. I talk constantly against the left. You should too. You should never support your destroyers. But that doesn't mean you should support the right. It means you should never support your destroyers. And if the right wants to destroy you and the left wants to destroy you, then you need to find those people who will truly slow things down to buy us time. And in my view, those people are people who are not Trump supporters within the Republican Party, and the people who are not part of the far left within the Democratic Party. And I'm supporting those people who at this point are the mealy-mouthed centrists who can't really get anything done. But that's fine that they can't get anything done, because all I want them to do is buy me time, buy you time. You can't achieve more than that. Trump was not buying us time. Trump put us on an acceleration towards authoritarianism, maybe of the left, but it's still, he accelerated the process, and you saw his acceleration with the rise and popularity of the far left under Trump. Trump didn't suppress that. At the end, he encouraged that, and he encouraged the worst elements on the right. So now you have two groups, authoritarians of the left and authoritarians of the right, all a result of the Trump presidency, all a consequence of the Trump presidency. The two parties are way out there. Now, I want to find those people in the center who can still govern this country without having it sink into an abyss. And I think that Biden, with some opposition, can buy us time so that we don't land up where OAC wants us to be or where Josh Hawley wants us to be. That's my reasoning. I've said it over and over and over again. And we'll keep having to say it, because this is not going to go away. This is going to be an issue in every election in the foreseeable future. Why is the survival of the fittest an invalid concept? I don't think it is in the right context, right? I think survival of the fittest is completely true and right within the context of evolution, within the context of biology. It's just not a concept that applies to economics or to life generally, because of reason. Because when it comes to human beings, it's not a zero-sum game. If it was, then survival of the fittest would apply to human interaction as well. But the reason it doesn't is, and there's a sense in which it does, right? Survival of the fittest means, but human beings are fit to survive. But my survival is not at your expense, which is what survival of the fittest refers to. In evolution, survival of the fittest means that others don't survive. Human reason, ability to trade, the ability to establish win-win relationships makes survival of the fittest irrelevant to human interaction, but still relevant in evolution. So it's not an invalid concept. Why did Marx hate the nuclear family? Did he believe the family unit was a threat to greater, larger collectivism? Is that why the welfare state was designed to break apart the family? I don't know. I don't know why Marx hated the nuclear family. My guess is that he didn't have, I don't think he married. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end at the end of the day, he probably believed in his utopia that we didn't need a family. We could all have multiple relationships, raise children together, like on a kibbutz. Although a kibbutz, people divvied up into monogamous relationship, but they all slept with each other's wives and husbands on the back. But they all raised their kids together in the kibbutz. They were raised in children homes. There was no, like, my children. They were the kibbutz's children. So it definitely interferes with that larger scale collectivism. Is that why the welfare state was designed to break apart the family? No, I don't think so. I think the breakup of the family is something that could have been predicted, but, the welfare state was designed to make people dependent on the state. I think originally it was designed to allow people to get help from the state and for them to appreciate the state's power and the state's ability to help them. But it ultimately what people like about the welfare state is it makes people dependent on the state. I don't think it was explicitly, I don't think the people who designed the welfare state, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think the people who designed the welfare state thought through the impact it would have on families. And then when they saw the impact on families, it was just now a question of what was more important to them. And the welfare state and the dependency on the state was far more important to them than whatever their views about family are. And yes, there is there's certainly modern Marxists or neo-Marxists, or maybe they're not exactly Marxists, whose priority it is to break up the nuclear family. That's the most important to them. But I don't think that was true in the 60s when the welfare state was established in the United States, or in the 30s when you get the first elements of the welfare state. I don't think you had those kind of leftists like you do today who are really focused on breaking up the family. Why not a discussion with Malice themselves? I think that would be popular. I'm sure it will be popular. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not ruling it out. How do you convince pragmatists to believe in objectivist values when they somehow can cope with any situation, even the one, and get away with it? Well, because they can't, right? You can't escape reality. Maybe they can cope with a particular situation, but ultimately they have to fail because ultimately they cannot cope. And their failure could manifest in their unhappiness. Their failure could manifest in what you saw with Trump right now is it just got out of his control because he didn't live by principle, because he couldn't plan and see what's coming, because he couldn't lay it all out. Then he did something and he didn't see the consequence, which was the attack on the Capitol and the backlash against him. He couldn't see any of that because he can't think in principle. He can't think in beyond the moment, right? He lets his emotions dictate. So pragmatists can't get away with it. The whole point of pragmatism is it's the appearance of getting away with it. I mean, Bernie Madoff was a pragmatist. Did he get away with it? No. All these people around us that are pragmatists, are they happy? Are they successful? Are they long-term successful? Are they gaining real values? No. They're just delaying settling up. They're delaying the end of it. My wife wants to know if there are any support groups for spouses of objectivists, or is it hopeless? Why do they need a support group? So I don't know of a support group for spouses of objectivists. My spouse is an objectivist, so that helps. She doesn't need a support group. What are you doing that causes your spouse to think she needs a support group? That's the issue. No, the quick answer is no, it's probably hopeless. You're probably going to have to live with him with whatever it is that bugs you about him being an objectivist or her being an objectivist. Have a feeling you missed my question. Would you be open to a talk with Mike Malice? Oh, no, I just said, I need to think about it. I don't want to comment here on Malice until I've really thought it through. Dr. Book, with Democratic control of the Senate, House, and presidency, do you believe we will see statehood for DC and Puerto Rico? If so, what do you see as the long-term effects on the legislature? No, I don't think we will see statehood for DC and Puerto Rico in the short run. Now, if the Democrats in 2022 gain seats in the Senate, they'd have to probably gain 2 or 3 seats to get to the point where they could pull it off. Then maybe. But in the short run, I don't see it. With the 50-50 split, it's too dicey. There are too many Democrats that might oppose it. And it could backfire on them. For example, Puerto Rico. Why shouldn't Puerto Rico become a state? I mean, Puerto Rico should become a state. It just shouldn't while I'm there. For example, Puerto Rico, the governor of Puerto Rico endorsed Donald Trump. The political elite in Puerto Rico, at least, is Republican. So it turns out, registered Republican. So I don't know. It might backfire. It might turn out that Puerto Rico is not that Democrat as they think it is. So I think they would hesitate. But I also think there are senators, Democratic senators, who don't want to rock the boat that much. But we will see how it plays out. With regard to DC, it's more likely because it's a no-brainer in terms of 2 Democratic Senate seats and an extra House seat. Again, it's a question about whether Democrats really want to push this and really want to play this kind of game with Republicans, and I have my doubts that they have an overwhelming majority. Should we add a state to the union on a 51-50 vote, even if they could get 51? I think there are going to be a lot of Democrats that say no. Now, I know you guys think the Democrats are the devil, every single one of them, all of them. So I don't think it'll happen. I do think parts of DC should probably be annexed to Maryland, so that those people can have representation, given the way DC has evolved. But to create a state in DC is absurd and ridiculous. What do you think should the U.S. do if China, the PRC, attacked Taiwan to reunite it with the mainland? Look, right now, we have a defense treaty with Taiwan. That is, right now, the United States is committed to defending Taiwan if it is attacked by China. I think as long as we have that treaty, that is what the United States should do. Now, do I believe we should have that treaty? No, I don't think we should. Unless we annex Taiwan to the United States. I don't think we should have such a treaty. But I don't think the United States should have treaties around the world where we commit to defending other countries' independence, even free countries. Unless it's some kind of much broader defense treaty that involves all free countries. But that would have to worked out rationally. But so I wouldn't have the treaty. But if we have a treaty, then yeah, it would mean we'd have to go to war. Now, again, I don't advocate for that. Same with South Korea. I think we have a defense treaty with South Korea. We have troops in South Korea. Why do we have troops in South Korea? South Korea is a rich country. It can defend itself. There's zero reason why the United States should defend South Korea. But we have a treaty. So if we have treaties, we have to abide by the treaties. And if we don't believe in the treaty anymore, we should get out of the treaty. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have it both ways. So that's my position. I would rather not have those treaties. In that sense, I was much more radical in my foreign policy than anything Donald Trump ever said, and more principled in terms of my America First attitude. Donald Trump was never America First. And yeah, so that's my view of. I mean, if on principle we should defend Taiwan, then on principle we should have defended Hong Kong. I don't think we should go to war over Hong Kong. Although it would be nice. It would be nice if the president of the United States said something about the fact that Hong Kong just arrested a bunch of democracy activists. The fact that they've clamped down, that China has clamped down on Hong Kong and basically destroying all semblance of political freedom in Hong Kong. It would be nice if the president of the United States commented on that and made a big deal out of that. If you want to pretend that he is tough on China, but we do not have a president who's been tough on China. Not tough on China on the things that it's important to be tough on China on, which is on freedom. He's been tough on China on stupid things like trade, instead of on the important stuff, which is freedom. I would have liked to be a president who was much tougher on China, not because of trade, but because of issues of liberty and freedom. And I think that if you had such a president, then China wouldn't be doing what it's doing in Hong Kong right now. China's afraid of the United States, but it knows it's got a paper tiger in the White House. It saw what Trump did with North Korea and what Trump did with Putin and what Trump did with the Saudis. And they saw what they did with them, having concentration camps, arresting journalists. Why not take over Hong Kong? The United States is not going to do anything. So Trump was weak on China. Weak on China. From the beginning. All right, Stefan asks, thoughts on the movie Citizen Kane? A show on art, movies, music soon might be good after these last few weeks. Yeah, I agree. I'll do something on movies and stuff. And there was some shows I wanted to recommend and talk more about, and I will. We'll do that soon because this show has to end. My thoughts on Citizen Kane. I mean, it's a very well-made movie. You get the point. It's beautifully photographed. It's in many ways revolutionary in terms of the camera work. It's very well acted. Orson Welles is obviously, brilliant, but it's a very sad movie. It's a movie about the destruction and about loneliness and about inability to change and about how, a scarring in childhood shapes somebody's life so that they can never be happy, and how a brilliant, successful person is unbelievably self-destructive. So it is, theme-wise, it is quite a negative movie and quite an anti-life movie. But you have to admire its, use of the art of cinema, its ability to use the cinematic tools at its disposal to convey a theme. I think it does that well, even though I despise the theme of the movie. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining me today. We'll have a show tomorrow. I need to think about a less. I need to do a show on economic on the stimulus, inflation, and economic growth. We need to talk about the stimulus because there's going to be another big stimulus now. We need to talk about government spending and its impact on the economy. So I was thinking of doing an economic show. We should do a positive show on art and stuff. Maybe I'll combine the two. We'll see. Jing, I can't pronounce whatever it is, the handle. He writes, I don't have $500 to donate. I'm sorry, but I'd love for you to watch Kurosawa's High and Low. You keep mentioning Kurosawa's High and Low. You don't have to in this case because I'm a big Kurosawa fan, so it doesn't take much to get me to watch a Kurosawa movie. So I'm putting it down here as to watch Kurosawa's High and Low. I'll try to watch it and let you know. There's a moral dilemma at the center of it that I love your analysis of. Please, I'll try to do that. But yes, Kurosawa is very good with moral dilemmas and creating those kind of situations and creating interesting situations. Very, very interesting. Not the outcomes, the way he resolves it is not always pleasing. It's not always good, but the situations it creates are always interesting. All right. Before you leave, please, thumbs up. Please like the show. It helps a lot. I have not watched Turn on Netflix. I have not watched Turn yet. What was I going to say? Yes, please show your support by liking the show, by sharing the show. Like. It helps the algorithm. Sharing is the way we grow. It's the way to get the word out there to new audiences, to your friends, to your associates, to people you know. That's how we're going to grow this movement. That's how we're going to grow the show. Please, those of you who get value out of the show at whatever level, you get a little bit of value. I'd appreciate value for value. Financially, you can do so on the Super Chat, obviously, but you can also do so on YourOnBookShow.com/support. You can do so on Patreon, on Subscribestar, on Locals. That's what keeps me going, both financially and spiritually. Because those of you who put money behind what you're doing, showing me that you value what I do, that there's, put your money where your mouth is. Put your money where your mouth is. Yes, put your money where your words are. Put your money where your values are. And if I'm a value, put your money there, and then I really know that I'm a value to you. And that helps keep me going. All right, thanks everybody. I appreciate the support. I love doing this, and we'll keep doing this. And again, thank you for all the super chatters today. Thank you, John. Really appreciate that. And thank you for all of my supporters on whatever platform and by whatever amount you happen to provide that support in. I really do appreciate you. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. I will be on tomorrow at some point. Try to do a more positive show. No politics tomorrow. Maybe economics, but